We've analysed the percentage that building companies are investing in marketing and advertising, and 3% is the sweet spot. Building companies that spend less than 3%, they never save that money because their margins get compromised because they're not generating surplus demand, which allow them to achieve the market level margins. I talk to a lot of builders that say, I do some high-end custom homes and then I do a few remodeling jobs to plug the gaps. That's not a good strategy because operationally, those two models are very different. It's very hard to set your company up for two very different business models.
So today I'm joined by Russ Stevens, co-founder of the Association of Professional Builders. Russ built and sold a multi-billion-dollar company in the UK before moving to Australia, where he got into custom home building and experienced the 2008 financial crash firsthand. That experience led him to start APB in 2014, which now helps contractors across 5 countries scale their businesses. Russ is an Amazon best-selling author, Forbes Business Development Council member, and the expert behind APB's annual industry report that surveys thousands of contractors. His research has uncovered that 92% of builders are making critical mistakes that are costing them serious money. And today, we're going to dive into some of these critical mistakes that relate marketing and brand to net profit. And he's just down the road from me on the Gold Coast in Australia. Russ, is that a good summary?
Great to be here, Charlie. Thanks for the intro.
So, Russ, as we sort of briefly discussed just before we jumped on here, I want to probably start with the ABP report you guys released in 2024. 2 stats in particular. One being that 43% of builders are neglecting Facebook and 38% aren't doing paid ads. So from your experience, especially over the last sort of couple of years, why do you reckon that is, first of all?
I think there can be a misconception that advertising doesn't work, or in particular, some builders think their clients are not on Facebook. But really, nothing could be further from the truth. It's not that advertising doesn't work or Facebook advertising doesn't work. It's generally because the messaging that the builder set up wasn't right. It didn't resonate and it didn't hit the spot, didn't connect, and that's what didn't work. But as a general rule, advertising does work. There wouldn't be so much money spent on advertising if it didn't. And Facebook and Google are the best channels by far for builders to generate leads.
You think that it's also a case that they're sort of unwilling to give it a good enough shot and good enough go, that there's maybe a fear that they're seeing a load of cash being poured down the drain? But to an extent, and obviously that I totally agree with the messaging and the positioning and be able to get that right. The landing page messaging, the ad copy needs to be congruent, also needs to resonate with them. But do you think it's also a case with the likes of Facebook, with the likes of Google Ads, if you're not giving it sort of a good enough shot and go, that the algorithms obviously not be able to sort of train, and whether it's a pixel with Facebook or for any Google Ads algorithm, do you think a lot of them wrap things up too early? And obviously, like I said, messaging's super important, but do you think that is the case?
Yeah, look, it's hard to continue spending money when you're not seeing results. So, there's quite a few factors in here. The biggest mistake we see is just not doing the groundwork, because if you don't put that time into getting the messaging right, it's really understand who is your ideal client, what is your USP, because if you're going to market and you don't have anything unique, unique messaging, something to really differentiate you in the market, then you're just another builder, and it's going to be very difficult to stand out with all the noise. And if you're not really understanding what you're doing in terms of Facebook advertising, or if you're engaging an agency but you haven't provided them with that vital messaging and point of difference, the agency's going to struggle to get results for you, and that's a lot of money going out, and in particular with general contractors, where the sales cycle is extraordinarily long. the you can be 12 months in a sales cycle, that, so you got to have a lot of confidence that what you're doing is working to keep pumping money in for that period of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's harder if you're a business in your infancy and you don't have that experience and exposure to those sort of long sales cycles. And so you let it run for 6 months and it hasn't quite turned a profit yet and a return on investment. And so you wrap things up early when in actual fact, those 2, 3, 4 deals which are in pipeline and to end up converting could easily make it more than profitable.
Well, that's a good point, because the other side of this, of your marketing, is the sales side as well. So you could well be generating good leads, but if you don't have a documented, repeatable sales process and those leads are slipping through your fingers, well, you might think that your marketing's not working, but really the issue lies elsewhere. So I think marketing kind of takes the blame for everything going wrong. But really, there's a lot of moving parts to this. There's a lot of things to consider. There's a lot of gaps where the problem could be.
We're actually in the process of potentially hiring a US sales rep, and I heard something the other day about an approach to hire probably 2 or 3 candidates at the same time. It's easier to do with sales if they're like if they're a contractor, but I guess the same probably applies in the sense that if you want to get really data driven and understand whether it's your sales or whether it's your marketing, probably having 2 or 3 candidates at the start, and then you've got sort of a big enough data pool to discern whether it's sales or marketing alone, although that's not necessarily always feasible for those sort of starting out.
No, you've got to prove it yourself as well, because invariably small business, the owner of the company starts out by doing the sales process. So you can't just wing it, and you might be very good at sales, but unless you can document what you're doing and create that repeatable process, you're not going to be able to employ people and bring them in. It's business is all about systems and processes and documenting what you do, and then bringing someone else in that can follow those systems and processes.
Yeah, which is usually the really boring stuff that moves the needle, that often gets neglected. Also, I want to touch on, because your area of expertise really comes in terms of operations and financing, and I want to probably touch on how you allocate spend towards marketing, what percentage of revenue you'd say you should allocate early on, and then maybe the decision-making process on shifting or increasing spend or shifting that spend to other avenues, maybe other channels, or just other areas of the business. So should we start with the small business? If say we're in the first couple of years doing, I guess, less than 2-3 million, what percentage of spend would you say typically should go to marketing and brand?
Yeah, we always look at it as a percentage, and the percentage doesn't change. And this is all data-driven evidence as well from the State of the Residential Construction Industry report. And we've seen over the years, because we've analysed the percentage that building companies are investing in marketing and advertising, and 3% is the sweet spot. When you go over that 3%, then you're going to see diminishing returns, but maybe you're on a growth phase and that you're comfortable with that, and that's fine. But interestingly, we see building companies that spend less than 3%. You would think, or there's a school of thought that they're actually saving money on advertising, but they're not, because their margins are compromised in every case. We see this. So they might spend less than 3%. They might spend 1%, on a $3 million company, that's a $60,000 saving, but they never save that money because their margins get compromised, because they're not generating surplus demand, which allow them to achieve the market level margins. And And it's not just the gross margin that gets affected either, it's the net margin as well, even though they're saving that 2% on fixed expenses. So we see this time and time again. It's clearly visible in the report that the companies that do invest that 3%, they're the ones that get the highest margins. So it's like stopping your watch to try and save time. It just doesn't work. You've got a business. You've got to invest money to keep those leads pouring in. But in terms of the breakdown, this really depends on the maturity of the company's marketing department, really, the marketing assets, because in the early days, if you don't have this stuff that we've been talking about, having your marketing messages, your content, all fully developed, then you're probably going to be on a 2-to-1 ratio. So you're going to be spending twice as much on your brand, on your content creation, your website, etc. You're going to be spending twice as much on that as you are on your direct response, your advertising. However, as your marketing matures and you start building up more and more assets, you're going to see that ratio flip to a 1-to-2. So you're going to spend twice as much on your direct response advertising as you do on your marketing. But the ratio of 3%, that never changes. It's just the breakdown that changes, and it's all related to the maturity of the business in creating these assets.
Wow, there's some saucy stats. Yeah, I totally agree. The knee-jerk response, especially when things financially aren't going so well, or the demand isn't necessarily there, is probably to, I guess, hunker down and spend less. But like we're discussing with length of sales cycles and not being able to probably those deals will convert and put you in a far stronger position and allow you to command better prices because you've got the demand, so you're not having to settle for customers who sort of try and squeeze you for every dime and dollar. So totally agree on that front. The 1-to-2, that shift, that's interesting. I'm guessing at the start as well in terms of brand, what are you advising? What are the main areas you're getting them to focus on? Is it more sort of organic, social, so especially like video, or are you suggesting they do sort of written content? Is it more focused on positioning, messaging? I would probably say the strongest area to focus on, but what else would you advise them on in terms of brand?
Yeah, look, the messaging is the fundamentals. You've got to get that in place before you do anything else, really. But from there, then we advise builders to focus on their content creation. So you got to be thinking about the conversation that's going on inside your ideal client's head right at the very beginning of the journey. So for building companies, for instance, the main thing we help builders do is to transition from being a building company to being a design and construct company. Because if you're a building company, you're getting people come to you with their plans all drawn up, and they're not just coming to you, they're going to 5 other builders. And what they're doing, they're getting 6 quotes. The consumers don't have the skill set to compare 6 different quotes. Even if those quotes all look at the same set of plans, they're not going to be the same. They're all going to be different. So it takes an expert to be able to compare quotes at this level in this industry. So you want to transition to a design and construct company because you want to be controlling the design process, because apart from anything else, if you're in control of the design process, the things are going to come out on budget at the end. If you let an architect or a building designer loose, just trying to please a client, the client's going to give them a budget, but they're not going to be able to keep it on budget. Unfortunately, they don't have the skill set. They need a builder involved to provide that expertise. So this is why a lot of these architectural plans never get built, because they're way over budget. They've got to be redesigned, and it's very, very hard to pull it in once it's been designed. So with the builder, in control from the very beginning, the finished product is going to come out, more or less on budget, as long as the builder has managed expectations along the way. But in terms of your marketing, you've you've got to be connecting, attracting those people that are looking or thinking of designing a new home. You don't want the people that are thinking of building one. You want the people that are thinking of
Yeah.
designing, because you got to capture them at that early stage. But
Yeah.
as you create more and more marketing assets, you're going to be appealing to them all through the stages, because you're going to be marketing to people in your funnel as well. But that's the biggest one. And for that, you got to be
And which,
thinking
sorry,
about what
just
are the questions.
to interrupt on that point as well. Like I mentioned to you before we jumped on the podcast, we've got this kitchen site in London, and that probably is one of the biggest bottlenecks in the sense that we were sending out quotes, and we weren't hearing much back, and we were doing follow up or answering calls on time, but these, like you said, they're probably window shopping a little bit, especially if they're just getting quotes through. Whereas if you have someone who can sit down and can go through the whole process and can tell you why one quote, a quote which they've received doesn't exactly make sense or add up, and instead if they structure it in this way, and more consultative, I guess. So yeah, it resonates a lot with myself. But what, in terms of that, doing that design and build, would you suggest that they contract out the design work to a designer? How would you structure it? Say it's early days. Take the kitchen site which we own in London. What would you suggest in terms of doing that design and build, rather than just sending out the quote for the build?
Yeah, it does depend on the size of the company. So, smaller building companies that don't have the ability to bring on an in-house designer full time, that is the easiest first step. You find a company or two that you can work with, but the main thing is you own the relationship with the client, and the building designer becomes a contractor for you. So you're in control of the relationship. That's really, really important. This is where it can go awry for a lot of builders that don't manage that part of the process correctly, because we've seen instances where they just say, we work with this building designer or this
Yeah,
architect. They divert the client thinking
yeah,
they're going to get the job. But then all that happens, they do the design and then they put the job out to 3 builders to quote. And
yeah.
they're in the same position. So they really got to control that process. But as the company grows, they might be in a position to they got enough work to bring someone in house, and it doesn't even have to be like someone physically in house. The way we work these days with opportunities overseas, we have a lot of building companies that contract building designers in the Philippines, for instance.
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
a particular builder that says he insists that the architect or the building designer is overseas because he thinks they bring a bad vibe in the office. So he actually likes that idea of having them at arm's length.
Nice, nice. Okay, interesting. My sister did interior design and studied architecture as well, so and she's helping out with this kitchen site. So maybe that's a role we sit her in. Be interesting. I'll send this over to her as well. She'll be happy she got a shout out, no doubt. And we're coming back to the marketing and the brand side of that. I guess sort of part of what you were saying and where you were going is understanding the full journey which you're taking them through, and educating them on each step, having the content in place where they sort of feel comfortable with the process. They feel comfortable that you guys are sort of, I guess, experts and professionals who understand each step in the process and can take them through that sort of consultative approach. Would you find that now video is the most powerful way of doing that? Do you have a sort of a set template and approach which you get your clients and builders to follow?
Yeah, look, it starts with video, and video is very important and very powerful. But the overall strategy is about hitting multiple channels, and that doesn't mean that you're going to 10x your workload, because you can do something once and then repurpose it. So the strategy we get our builders to follow is invariably it's working with a copywriter first, because without any specific training, it's quite difficult to produce high quality marketing content and scripts. The builder, they've got the expertise, but they don't have the structure. And by working with a professional copywriter, you can spend a couple of hours sitting down with them. And once you've identified what the top topics are that you want to talk about, the conversations going on inside your ideal client's head, once you've got that clear, you can sit down with a copywriter and they will interview you. And the builder can then deliver his expertise. And the copywriter will then put that into a structure, a proven structure that is going to deliver results. It's going to be concise. It's going to be hard hitting and punchy. But they'll go away and they'll produce the scripts for each of these topics the builder's identified. And the builder can then go into a studio, or initially they might just pull out their phone and shoot the videos. But now you've got, very quickly, you've got 12 content videos. But the copywriter can then adapt those scripts very quickly into blog articles. It won't take long at all. And it doesn't cause the builder any additional work. And now you've got 12 blog articles that you can release once a month. You've got your long form videos that can go on YouTube and even Facebook. And now you've got your blog articles. And then each article can be spliced up into a 3 email campaign as well. So now you've got content for your CRM. And you can produce like 12, 24 social media posts from each article as well. So now you've got your social media posting strategy as well. So it takes a bit of work at the beginning, but that work is very leveraged for the builder because they don't have to do all this themselves. They can engage other people to do the work, but you can get a year's worth of content from a few hours work, which is really powerful.
Yeah. And this is a conversation I'm having with a few of our clients at the moment. None of them ever want to do it. They prefer to sort of focus on being on the tools or manage the operations. And when it comes to actually sitting in front of a camera, that seems to be the biggest hurdle I've come up against. But it's so easy now to get like a mic for 25, 30 bucks. And you get sort of one of the latest iPhones and you've practically got a professional video setup, a camera setup. So, and then it's just a case of getting one of the team to film them. Like you said, they could go into a studio or they could even be out on the job site talking, okay, this is a table process, or this is how the team operates if they're doing X, Y, Z. Maybe be in the office with a designer. Or you could, like you said, if you've got a Filipino designer, a South African designer, whatever it might be, you could just be shooting it on your laptop or in a studio, talking through the design process. And then you can use a video. We've got a video editor out in Tunisia at the moment, really good, super talented. And it's a case of them just sending it into either their agency or finding someone freelancers. They probably have to do a lot more management themselves, but they could do all of that at the cost of, depends if they're using an agency and how many professionals they're using from abroad, I guess, and how many they're using from some of their native country. But you could do all that within sort of a couple of grand, and you can be rolling out, like you said, 10, 20 videos, flip them up, short form, long form, Instagram, TikTok. And it seems to be the world's biggest hurdle, but it can be transformative for how companies perceive whether businesses are able to be converted through paid. And that can change whether a company's doing multiple millions in a year or struggling to sort of surpass the million figure.
Yeah, look, it can appear a little bit daunting, but it's really not when you've got the right process, and the rewards are huge. This is probably the secret sauce, I'd say, behind a lot of our builders' success is the whole content marketing, the content creation. It's just so powerful.
You mentioned email as well. Have you got any good stats on how powerful email is and just sort of staying top of mind through using sort of SMS and email within CRMs?
Well, the thing is, once you've paid all that money to acquire a lead, especially if you're running a design and construct model, you're going to get people in the early stages, of decision making. And that means they're not going to be ready in a lot of cases. The timing won't be quite right. And that doesn't mean that they're a bad lead. It means they're a good lead, but they're one for a bit later.
Hmm.
And this is why having a CRM system is just so important. And it's so important to be communicating with all the leads on that CRM system that you've put in place on a regular basis. We find this is a very neglected area for builders, for a lot of businesses, really, to be fair. They either don't have a CRM system or they have one, but they're just not utilizing it. They're not
Yeah.
emailing their database on a regular basis. And if you don't do it on a regular basis, when you do email them, they're going to simply forget who you are and they're going to
Yeah.
unsubscribe or mark it as spam. So from the moment they opt in, you've got to be constantly feeding them with good information. I mean, if people mark your stuff as spam, it's, maybe you're sending them rubbish. So yeah, if you're sending them good, helpful content that you've created, and this is what you've produced videos and blog articles from, if it's good, useful stuff, it's going to position you as a authority. It's going to build trust. It's going to build rapport, and it's going to do
Hmm.
it automatically in the background so that when they are ready, you're going to have that conversation with them, and it's going to be a warm conversation. They're going to actually talk to you like they know you. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very powerful.
Would you what would you say? Because it's so easy for people to go down this route. And I think, as you know, I'm all for outsourcing, and most of our teams based in South Africa, and you can get really quality talent from abroad. But I think when people head over to Fiverr and they sort of hire the sort of the cheapest vendor to sort of undertake the social campaigns and to push out some emails, you'll often find the messaging and the content just doesn't resonate at all, and the positioning is completely off from where they need to be. So that content which they're using to stay top of mind, is there anything in particular which you think sort of really resonates well? Is it pricing? Is it what's vogue and in fashion at the moment? Is it like how to uh, make how to decide on what contractors to use, and who to avoid? Would you say that's sort of the strongest, most powerful stuff, is the things that actually relate to their buying decisions? And
Well,
where do you think people go wrong?
yeah, look, there's one of the biggest issues in this industry is we use a lot of terminology, jargon, which doesn't mean a lot to other people. And
Yeah.
if you're designing and construct new homes, luxury homes, you're invariably dealing with people that are very successful and they don't like to feel stupid. So if
Yeah.
you can be the person that's educating the marketplace, whether it be jargon or something else, that positions you as an authority. So that's a very important one to tick off quite early, and it's
Yeah.
great content to
Yeah.
send out. But think about your process. Like, where does the challenge come from? Now, part of the process that we teach builders to use is to charge for quotes. You never provide a free quote because you're just in a race to the bottom. You want the kind of people that are going to pay for a quote. But a lot of kickback that builders get is, from people is like, why would I pay you for a quote? I've got this other builder that said he'll provide me a quote for free. So the first
Yeah.
thing the builder's got to do is educate the marketplace on the difference between a quote and an estimate, because
Yeah.
any builder can put together a 1 or 2 page estimate and it's meaningless. There's no research gone into it whatsoever. But for a builder to provide a quote, something that is reasonably accurate, well, that takes a lot of work and preparation, and you can't do that for free. It could be 30, 40 hours of work going into that. If you start
Yeah.
giving that away for free, you'll go bust before you get to the end of the sales cycle. So
Yeah.
you've got to be charging in order to provide a quote, but a lot of consumers don't understand the difference. So that's another good educational content, and you're actually going to educate them on why you wouldn't want to like go with a free estimate because it's worthless. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything, and why people that understand the industry will pay for a quote because
Yeah.
you talk about the benefits. So that really is what you want to be doing.
Love that. Yeah, because you can use it as sales collateral if they ask why they're having to pay when they didn't have to pay. Joe Blogs down
Yeah.
the road. Just you can ping that over in an email. It's a video of you explaining the process. It's a video explaining how you compare against other GCs and contractors, and then showing some of the quality of work you produce from a quote. And then suddenly they like going back to that sort of consultative approach. Suddenly they feel like they're in good hands, and even if they don't end up using you, they've still got something that gives them a really accurate quote design and breakdown. What do you on that? And there's a couple of things in sense you mentioned definitions and jargon, and an idea, I guess, is you could just have an A to Z list of sort of and go through the most common definitions and words people struggle with. Instantly, you've got a content calendar for the next month, obviously broken up with sort of other content pieces and some of the stuff you mentioned there, but quite easy for you to then just, if you sat in the office, to roll through a load of content in a short period of time, and then get a video editor to piece that together with some sort of real world clips and maybe a team in action undertaking that work, or shooting what you might be defining. In terms of, you mentioned the 30, 40 hours can go into that design and that quote. How would you price that? Because obviously you want those higher tier clients and the clients to have that disposable income. But I guess it can be quite daunting for those who have that sort of price insecurity, and they don't feel they can charge that high rate, and they feel they're going to lose that business. What would you say, or how would you calculate what the right amount is to charge, where you're not losing too much business, but you're making sure you are able to acquire the right clients?
Yeah, well, the secret to this whole strategy is we are charging for a quote, but we never actually position it that way to the consumer, because it's way too easy for them to make this direct comparison. Then they're arguing over how much time you're going to spend on it and what they're actually getting, and can they take it elsewhere. What we actually do is we package up the quote amongst other services. So we're actually positioning a pre-construction package, which will involve a lot of things that need to be done on the way to obtaining an accurate quote. The site visit, maybe there's a contour survey involved, there's a soil test, etc. So we're going to package up numerous things so that the package that we're selling is not a quote, it just includes a quote. And this is where a lot of builders, when they hear us talking about charging for quotes, but they don't understand the strategy, or they've not heard the strategy behind it, because that's what we coach builders through. There's always I couldn't charge for quotes in my area. It's like, well, you probably couldn't if you positioned it like that. But yeah, the secret sauce here is how you package it up and how you present that offer to the consumer. That's how you get them to pay for quotes.
And would you do it in composable, like bite-sized chunks where they can choose what service they want, or would you say, this is what we're doing, it comes as one package?
Exactly.
We need to do this before we can give you an accurate
Yeah.
quote?
Yeah, look, that's a really important point, because the more you break it up with pricing for different components, the more you're going to focus your client's mind on the price. And we've got to focus it on the value. If you go to buy a luxury car, you don't get a breakdown of what the tires cost, what the wheels cost, what the chassis cost, the engine cost, etc. You get one price. You might get some different pricing for optional upgrades, but you get one price. You don't get a bill of quantities. And again, this is what trips up a lot of builders. They think they're being open and honest, and they're just like showing the client everything with this bill of quantities. But the client doesn't have the expertise to dissect a bill of quantities, but they will have the expertise to see the price of one item. Maybe it's an appliance or something, or tapware, and compare that with what they've seen in the plumber's merchant. So yeah, you don't want to go down that path. That's what you're getting, the specifications, the scope of
Hmm.
work, etc. But it's one price. But then you might offer some options, especially if they're coming in with a low budget but high expectations. You want to get to meet their expectations, as early as you can. But then you're giving them options if they want to upgrade.
Yeah. Never sort of cornering them where they feel like they've got nowhere to go. You set it up so they have the flexibility and option. They're still in control.
Yeah, that's right. And if they're adamant this is what they want and that's the price the budget they got, you might give them options to downgrade, when you present that. But really, the key with signing contracts, especially high margin contracts, is you've got to manage the process and manage the budget all the way through. So a client might come in with a $400,000 budget, but that's not to say you won't be closing the contracts at 850. But if
Yeah.
you don't manage their expectations all the way from 400 to 850, they're never going to sign that contract at the end. Every change, everything that they want to increase they want to make the room slightly bigger, but it shouldn't cost much. It's only it's a bit of extra
Yeah.
framing in their mind, but the additional cost. You've got to manage that expectation and document it and communicate it. And it doesn't matter how small the change is. You've got to document that and communicate it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if that sort of trust element is so key, because then when they want to do more work again in the future, or even if they're contemplating additional work on the project, which you potentially want, if they felt like maybe they've been screwed over slightly on the first sort of quote and work which you're undertaking, they're unlikely to come back for more and they'll probably turn to someone else.
Clients do not choose builders because they had the cheapest price, the lowest price. That's just what they tell builders that they don't want to go to contract with, because it's the easiest way to get rid of them. So if you're hearing constantly that they signed with another builder because they were $30,000 lower on the contract, you don't want to go trimming your margin. You want to be looking at your marketing and your sales process and figuring out how someone else demonstrated more value than you did, because the truth is they probably weren't cheaper. The fact is they were probably more expensive. It's a very small percentage of people that actually choose the lowest quote, a very small, and typically they're investors, with no emotional attachment to the home that they're building.
Yeah. Landlords, developers.
Developers.
Homeowners.
Even mum and dad developers. They're building an investment property. There's no emotional ties to that. It's all about the dollars and cents. You don't want to be dealing with those people. You want to be dealing with the people that are building a home that they're gonna live in, because they're emotionally invested, and those people will not be choosing the builder with the lowest price, despite what they tell you if you lose the contract.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. That probably leads us quite nicely into positioning. What would you, obviously specializing massively helps if you've got sort of your own position in the market and speciality. How important do you think that is, rather than being sort of a general contractor and general builder? How important do you think it is that they have sort of their own sort of cut in the market, a speciality?
Look, it's everything. Yeah. There's very few exceptions where someone might be operating in a very, very remote location where the total market is so small that they have to provide different services. But in 99% of the cases, it's all about specializing and niching. Because if you go after everyone, new homes, renovations, decks, extensions, commercial, industrial, you're going to appeal to no one. Because if someone is looking to build a high-end custom home, they're going to go with the builder that specializes in high-end custom homes. And they want an investment property, they want a box, they're going to go with the builder that specializes in knocking out volume, because they're going to be the most competitive, because that's all they do all day long. So people go for specialists, and that is where the dollars are as well. They will pay for that expertise because that's what you can focus your marketing on and elevate yourself, your position, and come across as an authority in that niche. And
Yeah.
a lot of builders, yeah, they get worried that if they were to do that, they'd miss out on a lot of other business. Yeah, the truth is those opportunities probably still will come along, but the fact is you're better off turning them down because you're better off setting up your building company to do one thing. I talk to a lot of builders when we do events, and they say, yeah, I do some high-end custom homes, and then I do a few remodeling jobs to plug the gaps. That's not a good strategy because operationally, those two models are very different, which means
Yeah.
it's not cost effective. It's very hard to set your company up for two very
Yeah.
different business models.
Yeah.
Renovations, remodeling, that takes a lot more supervision, takes a different skill set. If you just scale up new construction, that is a lot more scalable model.
Yeah, I actually did a video on this about sort of almost productizing your service, allowing you become like a Formula One pit stop team where you just continually improving that sort of one line of service which you're delivering. You're able to really lock down the contractors you rely on. So everything, your sales process becomes more streamlined. You know what resonates, what doesn't resonate, your marketing. And you answer my question on if you're getting sort of different leads coming in, do you take them on or do you turn them down? And it's so easy to, I've been there, I'm sure you've been there at different points, to be like, oh, actually we could do with sort of this small job on the side just to keep things afloat and to maybe put more into ad spend. And then next thing you know, you're juggling 1,000 different service
Yeah.
lines and trying to sort of keep everyone happy.
It's okay to do that in the very beginning. You're just starting out. Maybe you don't even know what your niche is going to be. It's fine then. But, if you're running a company, you're running a business, you've got to, you've got a niche. You've got to hone in and really double down on that niche.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Awesome. Let me see what else I've got. I want to quickly run over tools with you. Anything you're seeing in the market in terms of like AI tools and softwares. And obviously we touched on CRM, and you guys, I think, had a stat that 46% of builders aren't using a CRM. So there's sort of the fundamentals to get right. But other than getting the fundamentals right, are you seeing any cool tools in the market which you'd suggest people go and look at and consider using to help sort of streamline operations, improve their marketing, or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I've seen a very cool tool by APB, actually, APB Brain. So it's like ChatGPT, but it's been trained on all of our information, 11 years of it. So, I think when you go to ChatGPT, it's a little bit like going to Google. You're going to get generic information, but this is specialist info. So it gives all the answers, and it's like 24/7, always on. So in terms of AI, that's a really cool tool for anyone in the construction industry. There's another tool that we've just swept through the company like wildfire that we've been using, and this is Whisper Flow, and it's a dictation tool. Now we've all got quite used to using our voices instead of typing into keyboards and using the microphone on our keyboard. But what this does is it formats everything you say. So you could be typing up an email and you might be dictating, and literally if you're dictating, it's going to take you word for word. But this app actually formats it, even picks up some minor errors and fixes them up so that the sentences make sense. It will put brackets in, it will bullet point things. It's just an incredible time saver. So that's a phenomenal little tool that, has just fired through the company.
And would you suggest that's when they're wanting to put an email together, or when they're out and about on the job site and they're doing a little voice
Yeah,
recording, or
literally any time you would type anything, that is a tool that you would use all the time. You might be, typing something into ChatGPT, like you'd use that instead. It just speeds everything up. Yeah, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's going to
yeah,
save you a lot of time.
whisper protocol nice. Because I do voice notes into Claude, which is like GPT, and I think aloud. It's sort of how I think. So it's my way of sort of bouncing ideas off myself. But then I'll just riff for maybe a minute, 2 minutes, go back and forth. But a lot of the words are picked up incorrectly. And so like a classic is I say SEO quite commonly when I'm doing these sort of voice notes, but it picks it up as SCO. I think it might be something in my operating system, my computer. So every time I have to go back through and edit it. Whereas that'll probably speed up 20 minutes of my day, no doubt.
Yeah, because you can actually set words like that. Like we use the phrase "saucy" for state of the residential construction industry, and it'll always like write it wrong, but you set the keyword and it
Yeah,
recognizes it and it gets
this
it
is it.
correct. Our head of operations is called Varant. It can, these dictation devices can never ever get that right, but this one does
Yeah,
because you've got it as a set word. You can insert your meeting link, insert my meeting link. You can use a key phrase and it will just put the link in there. So it's just
yeah.
massive time saver.
Okay, nice. I'll look into it. And anyone listening to this, I guess should look into it. And with estimating tools, I saw you guys had someone on. I can't remember how long ago, but you had someone on who discussed AI estimating, and I was speaking to a prospect the other day who was using written down somewhere handoff. But do you guys suggest using any AI estimating tools? How much research have you done in that field?
Yeah, look, we don't make specific recommendations on any construction software platforms because we find that there's different platforms that suit different builders in the way
Hmm.
they operate. And some are more advanced with software, and they'll go for a platform that's got all the bells and whistles. Others might be find it a bit daunting to find too many options, and they prefer maybe a newer platform with less options, and that suits them. But with so many different options out there, we've partnered with a lot of the big software companies and companies that provide estimating software as well. But we don't recommend specific ones. We let our members recommend them, so
Yeah,
they rate review the partners, and that's how our members can make their own decision. But I think the beauty here is that as a builder, you haven't specifically got to be going out and looking for AI solutions. They're actually coming to you because the
yeah,
use of AI is being embedded in the tools that you're already using. So you're
yeah,
probably using AI a lot more than you realize.
yeah, yeah. What would you say in terms of decision making, when to automate, when to start adopting certain AI tools? Do you have like a decision matrix where you can look at a certain segment of the business or operating procedure and go, okay, now it's time to maybe implement AI there, or do we hire another team member to help with that area because currently that's a bottleneck?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing they've got to do is look at where they're spending their time and understand what their value is, their hourly rate. So by simply looking at their salary, what they're earning in the business, because obviously the bigger the company, the more they're going to be earning, and understanding how many hours that they're working, and then calculating their hourly rate. Now we've got a value of the time. Next thing to do is a time audit to see where the time is going, because if they're working more than 40 hours a week, I'm sure they'd like to get that down,
Hmm.
to 35, even 30 hours. So we need to look at what we can take off our plate. So we'll do a time audit, and then we'll start identifying the low value tasks, the ones that sit below their hourly rate, because it's simply not viable. But before we delegate it, we want to go through the DAD process, delete, automate, delegate. So does this even need to be done? Because when we step back and look objectively, sometimes we find ourselves, and this happens as we systemize and scale as well, we're actually paying staff to do stuff that doesn't need to be done. So very important that this is performed on a regular basis, even with team members. But does it need to be done? Can it be delegated? That's the first step. If it does need to be done, then can it be automated? And with AI agents coming into play now as well, there's a lot more that can now be automated than could be previously. So there's a good chance it might be automated, but if it can't be automated, who can it be delegated to? And we want to take that down to the lowest hourly rate possible, whether that's, employing someone offshore in the Philippines, or, maybe it's a team member that has to sit in the office. But when we look at our hourly rate, we've got to get those low value tasks off our plate, and that's how we free up time to work on more of the high value stuff.
Yeah. Calculating your hourly rate. I hate to think the number of hours I'm doing at the moment, what mine would turn out to be. But yeah, task which is probably worth doing.
Yeah, it's a calculation I always get builders to do, and it's a shock for a lot of people, because when they do look at what they're drawing as a salary, because the net profit left in the business, that isn't the salary. It's what you pull out of it to pay yourself. That's the salary. But when you look at the hours that a lot of business owners are putting in, the weekends and the evenings spent quoting jobs and meeting with clients, that hourly rate plummets. And when they compare that to what they're paying their staff or even their subcontractors, it's it can be a bit of a shock. So a lot of work needs to be delegated.
Yeah, I imagine
normally that is
will avoid doing that just because they don't want to see the reality on what that looks
like.
Yeah,
and it brings the realization that they're just not charging enough for their jobs, and the margins need to increase.
Yeah, interesting. Sort of cutting back. You got sort of Elon Musk's philosophy. I think he says to cut 20% or 25%, and then you're supposed to add back to at least 10%. Because if you can't remember the exact numbers, but it's in and around that. If you're not adding back enough, it means you haven't cut back enough, and you only really sort of find out what you do and don't need once you sort of started making one of those significant cuts. And you'll probably realize really early on whether you did need something. But if you're in two minds, it's worth probably just at least for a week or a few days, depending on what it is, just to pause that, maybe remove it from the process, do things still operate as they should, and just going through a workflow. So the way they're doing it, what happens next, and you sort of have different forks depending on what the decisions are, and you quite quickly can probably look at things more individually and go, you don't really need that process in place. It's something which we've done a lot more of the last couple of years, and been really transformative. And even now, like we'll unintentionally, just because I think we're inclined as humans to add more, when we're going through processes, we're like, oh, we need to do that, and we overcomplicate it. And then the other day we were going back through our workflow on creating new websites, and then implementing a lot of the SEO ahead of time. And we sort of cut 4 or 5 stages out of there, which are just sort of getting in the way and making things more complex than they need to be. And then the other point you made on seeing if you can automate it, I forgot who the founder is or CEO of some of these major Fortune 500 companies, but he basically said that before any hiring decision gets made, he expects people to decide whether an AI can be used to do that role instead. And I think that's probably quite an easy way to assess things as well, is can an AI do this, and how long is it going to take for us to implement an AI to do this, and what are the risks associated, and how much human involvement is needed. You always probably have to have some human oversight, maybe 20%, depending on what's being automated. So then you just got to ask, have you got the capabilities and resources to manage that with the human resource you've got at the moment, and have you got the resources to automate? And the other final thing I'll probably add on is, and it's something I just saw sort of is sort of clickbaity title, but I believe it to be true. I haven't actually read the article yet, but businesses that pay for external AI, whether software or getting someone to set up for them, I think find a 60% more successful with sort of AI adoption than businesses who try to build it in-house themselves. So that's the other thing. If you don't have that resource in-house, there's so many resources to hire people to create those automations for you once you've sat down and discussed your processes and strategies, or strategies, but processes and operations, and gone through each step, like we were saying with that workflow, analyze where AI can best be utilized, and then someone either to build that out using tools like NA10 or make.com, or just paying for a monthly subscription and a software to take that sort of heavy lifting off your shoulders of actually building it yourself. And it depends, then it's a case of deciding how custom does it need to be to your business, and can you sort of use the tools available to sort of the best ability to do what you're already doing. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting stage we're in now, where a lot of things probably need to be assessed, especially for bigger businesses. And I think there's a huge amount of opportunity for these smaller up and coming businesses. If they're able to sort of objectively look at their processes early on and really analyze them, they can make a lot of headway and cost savings by utilizing AI in the right way. Whereas a lot of these bigger businesses, there's a lot of red tape they need to go through, or a lot of people working sort of day in, day out aren't necessarily wanting AI adoption as much as they should be, when they likely they can utilize it to enhance their role, and they can do more rather than them being replaced. And so I think there's probably a lot of friction for these bigger businesses and a lot of opportunity for these smaller businesses. I don't know if that's something you're seeing just yet. It's something which we've been looking at, and part of the reason why we're sort of building a lot of sites ourselves, we've been partnering with clients on a revenue share basis with these sites, is because then we have a foot in the door and a piece of the pie to then hopefully do more with them and really sort of enhance their capabilities with AI. And I think it's probably, don't know what you're thinking, but maybe a 2-3 year window now to achieve that, maybe less. And then probably be too far gone that you've got some AI super intelligence that does it all. So I'm on a rant now, but around Christmas time, I was having sleepless nights because I was playing around with some of these AI tools, and especially the ones that allow you to create softwares and sites in sort of a speed of sort of a couple of hours, sometimes faster, depending on what you're trying to produce. Now, the capabilities aren't quite there, that you still need developers, and it's nowhere near there if you really want to create something of value. But the more I was playing with it, the more I was researching into it, the sort of scarier it got. And I was waking up like, oh, I need to be faster. So waking at 6 in the morning, panicking at my desk. I think it was healthy.
It feels like a sprint at the moment, doesn't it? It feels like we're in a sprint. Like you say, it's probably a 2 to 3 year window. It's incredibly exciting time to be in business, but it does feel like we're in a race, and we can't get left behind. And a lot of the stuff that we need to implement in 6 months' time isn't even available yet. So we just got to be ready when it is available, so that we can implement and keep moving forward and keep saving more time. And importantly, I think it's really important that we bring our teams with us, bring our teams on board. We can't have them scared of being replaced by AI. We need to empower them to utilize AI to make themselves more productive, so that the company can grow without growing its headcount.
Yeah. And especially those individuals who sort of are full-time employees, the likelihood of them being replaced is actually quite slim. It allows the business to do more with the team that they've got. And I think that's conversations I've had in the past with a lot of the team and trying to get people to adopt certain things. I think that's a big fear. It's like, well, if I work on automating my current job role, where's my value? But actually, then they become a conductor of an orchestra of AIs, and suddenly
That's
their
it. They
value
become
goes through the
manager.
roof.
Yeah, a manager of AI agents actually become more valuable. So yeah, the people that understand AI and can use AI, they'll be employed, but be employed at higher salaries as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, nice. Russ, I think that's an hour's just gone, and huge amount of value shared by yourself. I learned a lot. We'll take a lot away, and I'll get on the phone to Terry, who's heading up the building and development stuff for this kitchen site, which we've got in London. And I said, Terry, we need to make sure we're controlling the design process, and I'm going to show him this podcast. So I appreciate everything you've shared. Is there anything else you want to add where people can find you? Anything related to APB? And obviously we can throw some links into the description area, but where can people find you and anything else you want to share?
Yeah, look, if you Google Association of Professional Builders, you find our website, you find a lot of cool resources on there. You'll even be able to try out APB Brain and talk to an AI version of myself, ask it anything and get some answers. We also have a book, Professional Builder's Secrets. So yeah, if you only read one book a year, this will be the one to read. And this takes you through the whole strategy of running a successful residential building company.
I actually was listening to a podcast of yours in the gym yesterday, and I think you threw out a stat that builders who read one business book a year. What was the stat? You'll remember it better than I.
Yeah, you're going to put me on the spot here, but it was astronomical in terms of net profit just from one book a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's incredible. Some of these stats, it's even content marketing. Optimal is 12. Yeah, you want to be producing 12 pieces of content, but if you only did one, you're still going to see a lift in the margins that you get.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess a lot of it's mindset. People who are reading business books are probably going to be in the weeds about how they can continually optimize, really care about their business, probably beyond the construction and being on the tools. So that's part of it. But if that's not a big enough reason to go and read the APP book, then I don't know what is.
Good stuff.
Russ, I appreciate it. I hopefully speak to you soon.
Thanks so much, Charlie. Great chatting with you.